Tom Salemi. Welcome to this week's episode of Device Talks Tuesdays, brought to you by our friends at Fotofab. The title is Precision Metal Parts, Procurement Made Easy. We've got a very casual conversation about medical device manufacturing. I'm going to ask questions to our esteemed panelists, and we're going to learn all there is to know about precision metal parts and all that goes with it. So before we get into that conversation, I did want to, again, thank Fotofab for leading this conversation and for being part of Device Talks Tuesdays. It's great to have a new member of the Device Talks Tuesdays family. So as I referred up top, there are no slides today. This is going to be all conversation. So there's nothing available in your widget other than my introduction slides, which you're welcome to have. Questions will likely be taken at the end. I'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A box. We have a couple of folks from Fotofab as well eyeing the questions. So if you do have some, feel free to put them in there as soon as you have them. Please be detailed in your questions so we make sure we get you the right answer. And again, maybe we'll squeeze them in during the presentation if it keeps the conversation moving forward. As always, this discussion will be available on demand to all of you and to anyone who registers in the future. So if when you hear something of import and something that you want to share with a colleague, please make sure that they know that they can watch this presentation as well. Just go to DeviceTalks.com. And they can register for it, and again, watch it at their leisure. And if they're watching on demand, they can still ask questions. We'll still get that expert advice for them. So it's a great opportunity for folks to learn a lot. If you are on the social media machine, you can use hashtag DeviceTalksTuesday if you're tweeting or whatnot, and let folks know what's going on here. That would be great. And we're actually going to be sort of doing a debrief of this on Clubhouse tomorrow at 1 p.m. If you're on Clubhouse, please check us out. We're on the MedTech group, so it's a large MedTech group, and we'll be talking about this topic and a few others as well. So I hope you'll join us. Two folks from Fotofab, Megan and Clancy, will be there on there as well to sort of again recap what we're learning today. And once again, this is Device Talks. Those are the events we'll be doing someday, but not at the moment. So here we are on Device Talks Tuesdays. But when we can meet in person, I hope to all see you there. And just mention that you're at the Fotofab session, and I'll buy you a beer, I promise. We also have a Device Talks weekly podcast. It comes out every Friday. This is this week's episode. I spoke with Steve McMillan at Hologic and Christina Jones. She's the CEO of Guardian Lane and won the first pitch contest staged by a MedTech Color. Guardian Lane's a very cool company. Hologic, of course, a really important mover and provider of diagnostic tests during the pandemic. And it was a great conversation with Steve McMillan. So please check it out. We're on all of the podcast channels you can name, and we're easy to find also on DeviceTalks.com. Now, this is our excellent panel. We're going to allow them each to introduce themselves. I'll ask all the panelists to mute their lines while they're not talking, so the person who is presenting has our undivided attention. And it'll be an opportunity for us to learn about Fotofab, Optiforms, Arc Precision, and then Casey Guzik from Fotofab will bring in the rear and introduce himself before we get into our conversation. So with that, I would like to, that's right. And I put an agenda. This is the agenda. So we're going to do introductions now, talk a bit about COVID-19, talk about dealing with variability spikes, keeping connected with clients, collaborating early on R&D and future and Q&A. So again, it's going to be one of our freewheeling conversations. So if you have questions, please do provide them. And no, all right, I should have gone back. Here we are. All right, the panelists. Why don't we allow Anthony Giampapa, the Director of Sales of Fotofab, to lead us off. Anthony, please tell us about yourself and about Fotofab.
Sure. Afternoon, Tom, and everybody else watching. Anthony Giampapa, Director of Sales with Fotofab. Been with Fotofab now for a little bit over a year. As you can imagine, the year definitely flew by. Fotofab has been a leader in the photochemical etching industry for over 50 years. We specialize in high precision, thin metal components for the medical, aerospace, defense, telecommunications, industrial, automotive, and electronics industry. Generally, we utilize stainless steel, aluminum, titanium, copper, However, we do have the ability and capabilities to work with other alloys should they be specified. Generally, our etching process begins with a conversation, just like we're having today, whether that be over the past year, generally over the phone or via email. We'd much rather or like to be back in person as quickly as we can. But it's a collaborative and solution-based conversation with our customer and or prospective customers. Really digging into the project, the part, and then understanding, the pain points and really what solutions Fotofab can provide. We offer DFM suggestions during that conversation to really hone in on a perfect design that matches our manufacturing process. After that, we take some CAD data for the part or parts from that customer or prospective customer, and really we use that CAD data to plot an image of said parts or part onto a photographic film, and this creates a photo tool. We then take a sheet of metal specified by the drawing or CAD data, clean that sheet of metal, and then we actually place a thin layer of polymer, which is called a photoresist, which is UV light sensitive and resistant to acid on those metal sheets or metal sheet. That sheet with the photoresist then goes through our exposing process. So using that photo tool that we created, it's laid upon that sheet with the photoresist. UV lamps are then used to expose the image of the part or parts onto that photoresist. That sheet is then developed, so we use a solution to help wash away any of the unexposed coating, which leaves a mask in the shape of the part that is necessary to be manufactured. Then we can finally get into the actual etching of the part. So the uncoated areas are etched away using a corrosive solution, leaving the precisely defined features that are necessary for that part, or parts, I should say. After that, it goes through a stripping process. That stripping process utilizes another solution, but that's really to remove any of the existing photoresist or mask that is left on that metal sheet. So in essence, after the stripping process, we're left with a clean metal sheet and the metallic part that is necessitated for that production piece. From there, we can go into many different avenues using our value add services. So whether the part might need stamping, any surface finishing, so you're thinking of plating, any painting, application of an adhesive, for instance, any soldering, and then also assembly if that's required for a sub-assembly or a full assembly for a component. Once those steps or step is completed, then it goes to our inspection team. Our quality engineers use a rigorous inspection process to ensure that the highest quality parts always leave our facility and make it to our customers in perfect condition. In its entirety and as a whole, our process really allows us to provide solutions that are high quality, extremely accurate, with quick turn times that meet any of our customers' demands.
Excellent. All right. Well, next we'll hear from Robert Brunson, Vice President in Sales and Marketing from Optiforms. Rob?
Yep, I'm on. Hello, everybody. Just give everybody a heads up. We're actually having our roof redone right now, so if it sounds like there's the roof's going to cave in, that's what it is. It's really loud here.
Let's hope it's not going to cave in, but I get you.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. I've been with Optiforms for 34 years. We started in 1984 manufacturing electroformed reflectors predominantly for the movie theater industry. As that industry changed to digital and then eventually even went further on into laser type applications for projecting film or movies, we had to reinvent ourselves. So we've now stepped into a large portion of our industry or business is medical and defense. So I'm not sure how many people are familiar with electroforming, but for the most part, it's a replication process and it's actually relatively slow. We start off with a piece of stainless steel, 17-4 stainless steel mandrel that's usually a convex, or I should say convex shape that we optically polish hard chrome. We then put that into our electroforming tanks and we plate anywhere from maybe a 1/2 to 1 millimeter thick on average of a substrate. Once the desired thickness is built up, we remove that components and we have now a freestanding optical shape, whether it's ellipse or a parabolic or a condenser, whatever it might be. Sizes in the parts we make range from something as maybe as small as the head of a pencil, all the way up to over a 36-inch ellipse or even parabolics used for a lot of times during the space shuttle launches. They would light up so they can see everything. As well as we do vacuum coating to enhance the reflective surfaces of our products we make, ranging from high reflectivity aluminum coatings to multi-layer dielectric coatings. We also do gold and rhodium as well. Our facility also has in-house machining capabilities, optical polishing, assembly work for mounting a lot of our components. We can attach different types of features, mounts, etc. Typical, let's add some of the medical components we make would be, we make reflectors for a laser retinal scanning system, laser teeth whitening, laser hair removal. That's, I guess, basically the gist of Optiforms.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Rob. Jeff Bell, managing partner of ARC Precision. Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself in ARC?
Sure. Thanks, Tom. So ARC Precision makes machine components and assemblies for the medical device industry, specifically orthopedic trauma and extremities. And also we have a focus on minimally invasive surgical instruments. We're 100% medical, so we're ISO 13485 and FDA registered. We really differentiate ourselves on design for manufacturing. And then I think a big piece of our contribution to the conversation today would be we collaborate across the supply chain with our customers and our suppliers to help them reduce cost, lead time, and inventory. And it's how we do that's detailed in Chapter 8 of this book from McGraw-Hill, Factory Physics for Managers. And certainly the use of these tools helped us not only manage during the pandemic, but the use of these tools across the supply chain with our customers on an ongoing basis helps us reduce cost, lead times, and inventory.
There it is. Sorry, couldn't find my cursor. And Casey Guzik, please, you're the tool and die manager, at Fotofab. Please tell us a bit about what you do and about your background.
Hello, my name is Casey Guzik. I am the Formings Operation Manager here at Fotofab. I've been with the company for the last 14 years. My career spanned from being a tool maker through engineering, and finally I went into management. We provide value-added service for our etching side of the company. In our department, we have the tool-making capabilities, which we use to make tools for forming parts whenever that is required. We also have forming capabilities here. We use anything from kick presses to punch presses to hydraulic presses. We also have small stamping capabilities in the facility. We specialize in short run and prototyping. So with on-site tool-making capabilities, our lead times are very condensed, and we provide parts that are on par with stamped parts as far as quality is concerned. So our advantages here are that we can make tools really quick, and our turnaround times are really short.
That's terrific. All right. So I'm going to open up the conversation. We've alluded to it a few times, the elephant in the room being COVID-19 in the last 12 months. We've all had to learn how to adapt. Here at DeviceTalks, we've created DeviceTalks Tuesdays in the podcast I spoke of earlier, because we can't do in-person events anymore. So, or at least not. Anyway, we don't need to go there. I'd love to learn how the past 12 months have impacted manufacturers, the manufacturing process like yourself. And Anthony, maybe you can lead it off. But let's identify in this first sort of question what some of the challenges have been. And then maybe with my next question, we can move the conversation into what solutions have been developed to meet those challenges and to make the entire process more efficient. So, Anthony, why don't you kick this one off?
Sure, appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a crazy year. As I mentioned, me personally, I started with Fotofab on March 16th of 2020. So my first day in the office was kind of the hearing about COVID-19, and by that Friday, we're located in Chicago. So by that Friday, the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois implemented lockdown. So it was kind of, okay, let's start this off. So a little bit crazy from that perspective. I think the biggest lesson and hearkening back to that week was, how are we going to do this remotely? How are we going to operate? Because we were very much a paper folder, job packet, pass this to this person, organization. We utilize computer-aided platforms, specifically CRMs, and truthfully, the CRM was kind of the saving grace. We were able to use that as kind of the database and the curator for all information, and then be able to pass that along throughout our organization. So I think the biggest problem in the beginning or obstacle was, how are we going to function as an organization efficiently while everybody's still remote all over the place, right? So I think it was a steep learning curve, but everybody kind of bought into it, understood what was needed, and we really came together as a team. And out of that, it actually really helped us become more efficient because now everything is electronic. We don't have to wait for that paper to print and then hand it over to somebody else. There is still that, hey, I'm not in the office. I can't just walk to the next cubicle or to the other department to speak to somebody about something. But, I really feel like that was a benefit or a silver lining that came out of at least the initial impact of COVID-19. As far as manufacturing, knock on wood, we were very lucky. We had very minimal exposure, no outbreaks, thank goodness. Our process inherently, everybody's pretty spread out. So front of the house, administration and sales, we were all working remotely. But our production team was really the team that saved the organization throughout the year because they were there every single day producing parts for our customers. In terms of production, the biggest hiccups we saw again were outbreaks with maybe metal suppliers or some of our plating vendors or some of our value add services. That was really it, to be perfectly honest with you. It was difficult, and I think the other learning experience was the necessity for over communication. This year especially, you had to be in constant communication because nobody knew what was going on. One day you're on lockdown, one day you're not, who's in quarantine, who's not. And when you're shipping things all over the country and the world, especially during a pandemic, it is extremely fluid. So I would say for us that those were kind of the learning lessons and the obstacles.
Yeah, no, okay. Well, we'll get into this more of the solutions next, but I do want to hear from, and I do feel like we're still in a very much a fluid situation, unfortunately. But Jeff Bell, what happened at Arc Precision? What was last March like, and what were the subsequent months like?
Well, sure, and I think I mentioned Arc really works with the science of operations across the supply chain, and I think that provides a framework not only for Arc but for all the companies. And maybe take a step back and explain what the science of operations is. Essentially, there's demand, and then there's variability around that demand, and there's only three buffers to deal with that, and that's inventory, time, and capacity. And so if you think about what happened last year, there's variability all over the place. There are wild swings in demand. There's variability in what Anthony was talking about, just in how do we work remotely. There was variability in the supply chain. And so, not only for the four companies here, but for the broader, world and in healthcare, I think we saw what happens when you have this big increase in variability and you don't allocate your inventory and capacity effectively. you get an unwanted time buffer and people are waiting in line for a long time. Fortunately for us, because we use the science on a regular basis with our customers, it just facilitated management in the pandemic. And thinking of those three things, we serve customers and many of them had elective surgeries. And so we worked together first on time, the time buffer. They needed a little time to figure out what was happening with elective surgeries. And then we were both investing in communication to plan capacity and inventory to do two things, really. One is to make sure we were level loading capacity and producing so that when the elective surgeries came back, we had both the inventory and capacity so that you wouldn't have a time gap and you could meet that pent-up demand for elective surgeries. So I think it's the science is a helpful way to think about any challenge, but certainly during a pandemic. And one of the great things about science is you can quantify these things. So just like the law of gravity exists, or force equals mass times acceleration, you can characterize the size of the capacity buffer needed with Kingman's equation, or you can understand what response time is going to look like with Little's law. And so I just wanted to jump in at this challenges piece because I think it's a good framework to look at all the successes that these companies have had that I know of, because it all comes down to when there's a lot of variability, and last year there was a lot of variability with swings in demand and all the other stuff. It's how do you communicate with your customers so that you can have the right portfolio of inventory, capacity, and time to meet rapidly changing and evolving needs. So I thought I'd put that in the challenges section here.
Oh, that's a great point. And it's funny, not funny, but when there were the delays in elective surgery, I always imagined sort of the that only impacted the OEMs. Like they already had all their supplies. It really wasn't going to trickle all the way back down to manufacturers. So to hear how long that train was, that delayed train, or we can talk about big boats in the Suez Canal now, you can use that metaphor, but it's amazing how far back it reverberated. Robert, how about at Optiforms? What were some of the challenges you faced?
Well, like everybody's talking about, working from home was definitely a challenge. We had our sales and marketing group as well as our engineers working from home for the most part, a good portion of last year. But as Anthony said, Optiforms is also a very tight group where we interact and communicate a lot. I'm on the floor on a regular basis going over projects and jobs. So it was very odd to have to relearn our communication. As Anthony put, we had to over communicate. So I really liked the way he put that, which is a good thing. I mean, I think we've all continued that actually as an organization. Now that we're all back in the shop, it continues, and it's really made for just overall better communication in general. The other things I think we've had to deal with, obviously, I'm sure you guys dealt with it too. People being out, we were shorthanded. So we had to overcome trying to get our product out the door with a fair amount of people being out, and some people were out almost the entire time. Some people that had were concerned about getting it. So those were that definitely was a challenge.
Out lockdown at home as opposed to out being sick. They were just out of the building.
Correct. Yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So we were shorthanded, having to work overtime to pick up. Also, Anthony, you made a comment about the people here in the shop working to keep things going. And I can't say enough about our employees that just kept coming in and getting product done and working overtime and working long hours to get our product out the door. It was incredible. We had a strange thing happen in last year. We had a downturn in about $600,000 worth of our core customers. And we were, a little freaked out. But what was weird is we had an uptick in about $600,000 in unforecasted business. So it was having to kind of reshift, what you would maybe normally inventory, and now we're having to manufacture and stuff that we weren't forecasted for. But we were very fortunate to have that happen because we ended up having a really good year despite the pandemic. So I guess challenges, was employees and communication. And Jeff, you put a variable mix of product. We had to deal with that as well. But the shop and our production group really came through.
That's excellent. And now I'd love to hear from Casey about this. I mean, Casey, you're on the front lines. You're in the room where all the action happens. It's hard to work distantly. I mean, I can work remotely. It's not a big deal, but I believe you're right in there. So I'd love to hear your perspective from as tool and die manager.
Absolutely. Well, it's a little bit of a different perspective since we have to be in the building in order to get the production out. So in the beginning, like everybody else, it was a little auspicious when things were coming down, and we really weren't sure how to approach certain things. But as soon as we got enough information on how to make the people feel safe, we implemented the protocols, and we were very fortunate not to experience any outbreaks throughout this whole time. So apparently all the precautions are working really well. We've been fortunate to have a nice backlog of work coming in, and during the heat of the moment of the shortages of ventilators, we received a lot of orders for that. So people were busy. We kept people busy, and we kept working, and we haven't seen much of a deterrent throughout that time. Some of the business has slowed down, but our team is cross-trained, so we're just shifting people over to where the biggest need is, and we just kept on trucking. So hopefully we see some better results for the coming years.
Absolutely. And, I think every industry out there, from events to healthcare to education, and we've all sort of learned how to manage things differently and in some ways better due to what we all had to endure in the past and are still enduring, unfortunately, from the pandemic. But we kind of touched a little bit upon sort of the variability spikes with inventory and capacity. Jeff Bell, I mean, what did you learn in that regard as to how to sort of, I guess, prepare and manage those fluctuations effectively?
Sure. Well, and I think the key is really working across the supply chain, and kudos to our customers, how we worked with the customers to make good strategic choices for inventory and capacity, because everybody had to invest. And let me give you an example again on these elective surgeries, right? You could have a knee-jerk reaction to saying, oh, elective surgeries are delayed, stop everything. Well, that doesn't leave the supplier in good position, because they've got this capacity. And when elective surgeries come back, you're going to want that capacity, right? So we worked with our customers to understand where that long-term demand was and build inventory so that we had it when the elective surgeries returned. The other thing that was real important to work with on the customers is sharing the sequence of work, so that as things were rapidly evolving, you could make sure you were using the capacity you needed on the most important things to them at the moment. And then you were level loading with the rest, so that, as things changed, you had this additional buffer of inventory. So, when people talk about strategic capacity and strategic inventory, it's truly got to be strategic. And we worked with our customers to make sure we understood what strategic looked like in this highly dynamic environment, and that we had a chance to do it. And I know, just as we, get into some of the other success stories, if you just think about the capacity piece, I've already heard, Rob talk about how they're able to flex capacity to, to strategically use their resources to meet needs. And I know Fotofab absolutely, stepped up to the plate, for the country, as Casey was saying, when it came to ventilators. So there's strategic capacity and inventory in our own little microcosm of customer to supplier. And then last year, it was a strategic use of capacity and inventory, more broadly to deal with the pandemic. And I know, in particular, Fotofab, really contributed to the effort there.
Well, that's a great thing to follow up on. Anthony, talk a bit about that whole, how you got involved with the ventilator effort. That was certainly something that hit the medtech industry early on, and it was, I think, a real opportunity for the industry to shine and step up to meet in a very important demand. So what was Fotofab's role in that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was actually once the pandemic was kind of labeled as a pandemic, and there was a big run on, hey, we need to stockpile ventilators because we don't have enough to fight COVID. We received a call from one of our existing customers who was actually a pretty small customer. Traditionally, we're pretty heavy into the medical industry. We do components for stents, diagnostic and testing components, dialysis machines, MRI and X-ray machines, but nothing that was really of note for ventilators specifically. So the customer came to us and inquired, and they were producing a very critical subassembly that went into a ventilator that was on order from FEMA. So this was a government contract. It was, I need these yesterday. And so inherently with our etching process, we can really produce parts extremely quickly. For instance, if it's just straight etching of a part, if we receive a PO, say tonight, we can actually ship parts out if necessary by end of day tomorrow. So that's really what we relied on. And speaking to Jeff's point, which was great, that strategic inventory, it all helps with planning. But how do you plan when the entire environment is completely just thrown up in the air and nobody has any idea what's going on? So as Jeff alluded to or mentioned, that really forces your hand in basically walking in complete lockstep with your customer, and that over communication that Rob brought up too is, what can we help with? When do you need this? And daily communication. And that's really what we went through with this customer. And they, in essence, were about, I think they ended up almost 500% what they normally do with us. There was about 3 different orders for these components.
500% more business
than we traditionally did with them historically. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That's amazing.
But it went past the ventilators too, because we were producing parts that went into the testing and diagnostic machines for, the COVID testing and the protocols for that. It also, again, went into the dialysis machines because a lot of the comorbidities were affected by COVID. So they needed a lot of these other ancillary machines as well. So it was a very interesting year, is how I will phrase it.
We lose Tom?
I'm back.
Oh, there he is.
All right. Did we, sorry about that. I just had to refresh. I'm not sure what happened. It's just, yeah, we'll move on from here. So Anthony, I'm sorry. Did you finish up with your talk? I saw you speaking, but I couldn't hear you.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. And I hear everybody now. All right. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there, but God for the internet. All right. So next, let's talk. You were talking about before I lost you. You were talking about communication with the clients, maintaining tight connections with clients, how that led to the increase in business. And I have to think that even as things get back to kind of normal, as we like to say, I don't want to say new normal, but that communication isn't going to go back to where it was. I think people get accustomed to that sort of responsiveness. So, Rob, how do you maintain tight connections with clients during those variable times? And maybe we can kind of project outward, like, what does that mean for communications going forward when you're working with a startup or a larger OEM?
Well, I mean, for us, we've always taken pride in thinking that we communicate really well with our customers. And I think we have, but I got to say, and listening to everybody talk here, just by the way, it's really amazing to listen to everybody all share the same stories and kind of how we all dealt with it in the same way. It's really good to hear that. With us, again, goes back to communication and actually going over communicating, as Anthony said, with our customers, looking for their needs and requirements. In many cases, our customers that we deal with have portals which we can check on. In some cases, we were checking daily to see what their demands look like, so we could help forecast what was going on in our shop as far as the demand for production and how we had to level load and make sure we were taking care of everybody's needs. But I think as time goes on, we're talking about the new normal, and I think we've adopted that as now our new normal. It's helped, I think, streamline a lot of things that are going on in our shop. The communication is great with our customers. You get to know a lot more about your customers when you're communicating that often, sometimes daily. And it's not just, we found that the relationship part of it was not just talking about what they needed. You started talking to your customers on a more personal level. And I'm sure you guys can all relate to this. I was working from home, and you're talking to engineers and you're talking to purchasing agents, and you got dogs in the background, you got kids screaming, you got kids doing homework, asking questions. And it was really interesting to have everybody be very, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for, just appeasing to everything that was going on. Everybody understood what was going on, and we had to get through this. But the communication was key, definitely.
Yeah, the bar definitely got a lot lower. Dogs were not such a big deal anymore in the background, or kids walking through the kitchen was not. People were like just wave their hands like, yeah, whatever. Continue with the presentation. Yep. So, Jeff, how about from your perspective?
Yeah, well, it was nice to have that sort of human connection with the dogs and the kids, and it broke. I think that broke down some walls a little bit so that the communication could happen. And communication results in sequencing so that you can meet priorities. And I think that was a big takeaway. And so we would communicate on sequence of needed demand with our customers weekly, because we have sort of a frozen week bucket. You can't change too much inside of that. But specifically, I mentioned these laws of science. One of them is Little's law. It says cycle time equals whip over throughput. And so, to use a simple example, if your whip's 1,000 and your throughput's 100 per day, then 10 days later, whatever's next in line, comes out. But that's if you play it straight. And if you're communicating with your customers, you're doing two things. First, on a long-range basis, you're allocating enough capacity to meet their needs. But then on a short-range basis, it's really about sequencing the work to meet the demands as they're happening and evolving. And so I think whether it would be customer portals like Rob mentioned, checking on a daily basis, or in our case, more systemic weekly communication with our customers, what it enabled us to do was sequence things in, we'll call it a virtual queue, outside that 1 week frozen bucket, where we can make sure we move the most important stuff to the front of the line without a negative effect on the other things, because we had originally properly allocated capacity. So I think communication is key to sequencing the work. And then, on an ongoing basis, and I know we'll get into this a little later, in terms of R&D, the idea of this virtual queue and sequencing the work and making sure the right stuff is at the front of the line. Well, you can reserve spots near the front of the line, in advance, so that when you need them, you can move up there. You can even make that part of your practice. So I think something that was really great from communication standpoint coming out of last year was our customers really view us as an extension of their operation, where they can communicate with us and sequence the work to meet their demands as their demand changes, because it sure changed a lot, pretty frequently last year.
That's great. I will. We're at the 4:38 mark, so I've got plenty of questions. We'll keep the conversation going forward. But if people in the audience do want to chime in, I'm probably at a point where I'm happy to ask your questions as well as mine. So if you have something that we've hit upon that you want to follow up on, please do. If you have some fresh questions that you want to ask our experts, it's a good time to do that as well. So we'll keep going forward. I'm just curious, Anthony, in terms of the prioritization and the working with customers, what tools do you use to sort of manage all that? Did you have to build new infrastructure internally to track all this information more closely, or did you have those tools and tracking systems already in place? You just needed to maybe soup them up a little bit.
That was actually the case. So we had the the CRM and the other internal computer aided systems in place, but they weren't relied on as much as 2020 necessitated them to. So it was a little bit of giving them some more horsepower, but also utilizing them more, and it was more of a strategic initiative rather than just something we use. But that's led to a fantastic strategy and how we use it currently, and moving forward. Again, as I spoke to prior in our conversation, I believe that it's really improved our efficiency across the board. We're generally 95% paperless now, which is fantastic. So there are silver linings that came around it, but again, I think the environment of 2020 necessitated, again, like you mentioned, adding that horsepower to existing platforms.
And your customers were able to. Did they see any changes on their end at all, or was it again kind of an all internally at Fotofab you had to make the changes?
Sure, it was generally at Fotofab, but I think the customers really appreciated the expeditious nature of the transfer of information, right? So again, I know we've spoken a lot about communication, and I don't want to beat it down anymore, but it truthfully is kind of the overarching theme for how businesses were successful over 2020, in my opinion. The making sure that on the front end you're communicating to the customer, making sure you understand all their needs, because the worst thing that we could have done in 2020 and even prior or after this year, it's going back after something's already in production because we forgot to ask about a certain spec or a tolerance, or going back to the drawing board, or any of those hiccups. So the more that we can communicate up front and eliminate those speed bumps, the better.
Excellent.
I could jump in there, Tom. I think
sure,
there's a great silver lining moving forward to what Anthony said, and we all sort of experienced. It was this high degree of variability that we had to deal with all this communication. But, the science of operations really does exist. And just like you would walk off a skyscraper, you'd have a bad day. If you have too much variability, it's going to cost you. Where you have variability, you will pay for it with either inventory, time, or capacity. Well, moving forward, if not only the variability of the pandemic goes down, but we squeeze that variability further by using things like the CRM, like the customer communication that we're talking about, then you don't need as many buffers, right? And you get real cost reduction, you get real lead time reduction, you get real inventory reduction that benefits everybody in the supply chain. So I think on an ongoing basis, applying the efficiencies that Anthony, spoke of, that there's, scientific, evidence that you can then keep doing that and really help your customers and help yourself across the supply chain by reducing cost, lead time, and inventory because you have less variability. So I think it really sets us up well moving forward.
Oh, that's a great point. As Walter in the audience says, communication is the precursor to developing trust, and I couldn't agree more. Casey, it's all easy for us to talk about communication and all of this. You're on the front lines making these things. What has this experience been like for you?
Well, we've been very fortunate because throughout the company we're all on a very direct basis. So whenever somebody needs any resource or has questions, we all are able to reach out to each other, and whether it's by phone or emails. So the communication definitely has helped us throughout this process. On our end, dealing with the manufacturing, with actually building tools and putting them in action in a short manner, we definitely appreciated on this side that our upfront the office was able to give us all the necessary tools for us to just get through to our orders. We also appreciated the communication with the customers, where whenever they found some hiccups on their side, so they would let us know up front where they wanted us to proceed with their their requirements. I think that this was in retrospect, as horrible as the situation was going around us, as far as business climate, I think it brought us into a meeting of minds and cooperating on a very personal level, where we could work as a team and provide whatever was necessary.
No, that's a great point. So can we talk a bit about, you may have hit upon it with my answer here, and if you could just push mute for 1 second while I ask a follow-up question. How did vertically integrating the manufacturing partners in the process provide these benefits? Is there more to it than we've kind of hit upon with communication? It was a lot more of the process. Maybe we can start off with you, Casey, answering that question, and then go over to someone else.
Sure. Well, since we are our company is designed or predicated on quick turnarounds and short lead times, we have the facilities here that we can when an order comes in, we can quickly provide the tooling necessary to make sure that we can form the parts in prescribed time. Also, as some of those initial short orders lead to larger volumes, our tools are robust enough that we keep reusing them for our production going forward, and we have many instances where the orders keep expanding over time. So I kind of got myself stuck
Okay.
here.
That's a great point of it. Are you able? Anthony, do you want to sort of follow up on that from your perspective at Fotofab?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the vertical integration, in essence, it provides that one-stop shop. And so it's our value-add services, it's our core competencies. What's better for a buyer or an engineer in going through a crisis such as, obviously COVID is unprecedented, but say one of their suppliers or existing suppliers goes out of business, or they can't source material and now they're scrambling. So what's better for somebody who's scrambling than a supplier that can provide better alternative solutions, but also take it from just that one step maybe and actually provide maybe a complete turnkey solution with what they can offer as a solution. So and again, that comes from the collaboration and the conversations that we have with our customers. It's, yes, we can provide this, but where do you take it, maybe 1, 2, 3 steps beyond what we're going to do for you, because we can offer these value add services and possibly we can help you along the way so that, you only got to come to one person rather than source, 6 different operations. So,
great point, Rob. I have other questions, but I want to give you a chance to sort of speak to this as well, and then maybe we get into the next question. How are you handling these things at Optiforms?
Well, I think we're going back to the vertically integrating manufacturing issues we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or we can get into the next question.
Whichever works. I'm good with either one.
Why don't we've got 10 minutes. Yeah, we got 10 minutes. So why don't we do the next one? I mean, this is open to everybody, but Rob, I'll give you the first swing at the pitch. Talking about R&D collaborative planning, how does it optimize design for manufacturability, and sort of where do the savings come from, and how does it affect turnarounds?
Well, for us, the manufacturing, or even I should say the engineering side of it, can take quite a long time working with a customer, but start off with a set of drawings or plans or engineering drawings, step files, CAD files, etc. Our customers submit that stuff to us as a design, but we have to work with our customers to turn it into something that can actually be electroformed, which is really unique in itself. But in some cases, I've worked with customers for a year, year and a half, 2 years before we actually come to a point where we're actually getting ready to get an order and start manufacturing something. And that's just the engineering side of it. And then you got to get into the manufacturing. For us is machining a stainless steel mandrel. As an example, this big 33, 36-inch ellipse we did. I think that was a year and a half of construction at our facility to support a product that big, which was for a huge solar simulator. But it all goes back down to working with the engineers, making sure we all agree on everything that we're going to manufacture, all the way from the tolerances to reflectivity. And once we're all on the same page, we just go from there. So again, it goes back to communication and making sure that we can manufacture what they want and we're giving them what they want.
Excellent. Well, Casey, why don't we bring this over to you, and then we'll bounce over to Jeff and then Anthony. So, Casey, how are you managing this issue?
Okay, so we get a lot of exposure to prototypes. So just like everybody else, we're getting CADs and blueprints that engineers design their parts. So a lot of times during the quoting process, we'll find certain areas that are difficult, or we come up with suggestions on improving the manufacturability of that part in order for it to gain some cost savings or be easier to produce. We have a lot of feedback from the engineers, and our sales department is great on communicating with our customers. We had an instance not long ago where we produced a part for kind of a cane-shaped wire form for one of our customers, and we produced it per print, yet in their assembly process, they found out that the parts became loose. So they reached out to us to change their part design, and we were able to simplify their design to a point where their tooling cost was just increased minimally versus a totally rebuilt. And in the end, it served its purpose, and we had a very happy customer.
Here, Jeff, why don't you take a swing at this one?
Sure, I can be pretty concise, but a big strategic advantage for our customers is when they reduce time to market. The faster they can launch products, the better and more profitable they are. And so we work with them in design for manufacturing and in scheduling to help them do that. We're a highly regulated environment. It's medical devices. So you can't be making changes down the line. So most of our work goes from prototype through production, and we are working early on with engineers with design for manufacturing suggestions so that they're planning and using the product they're ultimately going to use in the finished device, under regulatory requirements. In parallel with that, I mentioned this idea of a virtual queue and being able to reserve your spot. A great benefit of that is you don't have to have everything finished to reserve capacity, right? So it can be January, February, and we're working with them closely on design for manufacturing, and they've already got their spot reserved as designs get finalized in March, which makes their turnaround time much quicker, and it's much quicker using the processes and the capacity that they'll eventually be using for production, which then makes the regulatory process smoother. So it's absolutely critical in medical device that you're collaborating in R&D, both in terms of design and project planning.
Excellent. Anthony, why don't you handle this one, and then we have a great question about stamping and machining that I want to give to Casey.
Yeah, I'll be pretty brief. What better way to provide a solution for a prospective customer than to be able to work with them and collaborate on that R&D upfront work and really provide those DFM suggestions and understand the project, but then also have the full capacity and capability to scale to production. I mean, that, as Walter mentioned in the chat a little bit ago, that communication develops that trust. So, being able to develop that trust in the R&D stage, but then also dovetail that and have it follow you through the life of a program that's invaluable to our customers. So that's something that we really provide. It's also one of our value adds is working with such incredible partners like Optiforms and like ARC to where that integration happens, but it's that full collaboration, being able to bounce ideas off each other and really wrap our heads around the project, but then also provide the best possible solution for our end users and stakeholders.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's a great point, and got a great precise question for Casey at the end. Although everyone can chime in if there's time. We do have about 5 minutes left in the presentation. But Casey, the question is, what are the advantages of etching from a forming perspective versus stamping and machining?
All right, so we are in a great position of being able to use our facility here to make tools for the short runs. The turnaround time is hours versus months and days in order to build a progressive stamping die. So the advantage is speed to market. We can provide parts to a customer in days versus if a stamping die is required, that could take months. And also there's a huge price advantage. With our tooling, the capabilities that we have, we produce a part that's within the capabilities of a stamping die, and the quality is also to the highest level, and on par with what will be produced by a stamping die. So the speed to market is a great advantage, and the cost savings are as well. So I'm really confident when we get our projects that we are in a great position to be competitive with anybody who's producing parts with a stamping facility. But we also provide stamping. We also have stamping equipment on site, so we can provide that to an extent as well.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's a good answer to a good question. So thanks for that, Casey. I think we'll be wrapping up here. We'd love to give Anthony, you were representing you and Casey both representing Fotofab. We appreciate your sponsoring this conversation. We'll give you the final word from the panel.
I just want to say thank you to everybody. I know it's been a trying year, to say the least. So just glad that everybody, hopefully is safe, happy, and healthy. Thank you to the colleagues across the board. Tom, you for hosting, of course, and all your support staff, and our marketing team too, for kind of setting this up and really doing the hard work on the front end. So appreciate everybody.
That's great. I'll second that. Megan and Clancy have been great to work with, as is Fotofab. Thank you to everyone who registered and attended today. Thank you for being part of the Device Talks Tuesday series. We're going to have a couple of weeks off coming up, but please do join us again in mid-April. And again, thank you to Fotofab and the panelists, Jeff Bell, Robert Brunson, and Casey Guzik for sharing their expertise. So that's it, folks. Have a great Tuesday evening and great rest of the week.